Welcome back to AM Prime. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for staying with us this morning. We continue the conversation focusing on politics, and hopefully this proves to be a bit more of a constructive conversation as compared to our previous. And that being said, there's a lot happening globally in the world of politics. For example, in the United Kingdom, a snap election was called. That's due to be held next week, Thursday. There's hints at shifting tides within the UK. It's a similar situation in France as well. Also, snap elections are taking place. Again, a lot to be said there. So we can't get into the story of every single country, but what is happening globally in the political landscape? How can that be reflected here in TNT, more particularly with the young people? I'm joined by an individual who has not said much on politics, but does have an opinion on this particular topic. I'm joined by columnist Dr. Gerald Matis. He's with us in studio. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kijan, and good morning to everyone.
Well, thanks for joining us once more on the program. As I mentioned, you don't often speak about the world of politics. What engaged you to do such?
Yeah. So I listened to your previous, got part of your previous guest on, and I'm not a political analyst. I've never done professional training in youth development, but I can observe things happening around the world. And there's something happening particularly throughout Europe. Also in the US to a lesser extent. And it got my attention because a trend I see is developing. And it's been brewing for some time. And that trend has to do with a gradual shift more towards the far right. So we think about politics on a scale. We have the left, the center, and the right. The right typically nationalist, conservative. The left more liberal, more about internationalism, etc. And in the center, as you can guess, pretty much occupying that middle ground. But then we have the far right, which is the sort of ultra-nationalist sentiment and ideology. And what we're seeing in Europe, particularly in France and Germany, let's say, with their European Parliament elections, young people were found to have been moving more far right, which is something unusual because young people tend to be concerned with questions of rights and freedom.
Of course. Ideologies
that are synonymous with the left. So it's a really interesting kind of trend that we're seeing, and it's definitely something to keep track of because France called a snap election in light of their recent loss of ground in the EU election. And snap elections are sort of hit and miss because it sort of signifies instability. And President Emmanuel Macron, he called the snap election with the hope that it could solidify his base. We'll see how it goes.
But it is interesting. You've just named two European Union giants. The country that just exited the European Union, the United Kingdom. That election sees the left actually gaining grounds. In fact, it's predicted that Labour will have a landslide victory. So, do you think that this ultra-nationalist movement is focusing more so on the independence, the autonomy of these nations? That is why there is a focus from young voters.
Yeah, I think so. But it must be said that the Labour Party, they're not quite left. They're also more center-left. So they're also occupying that middle ground in the hope that it doesn't estrange those would-be young voters who would otherwise have voted for the left, because we're seeing that certain values like rights and freedoms, and by rights and freedoms I mean things like LGBTQ rights, for example, like climate change. Those values are occupying less priority. And we're seeing issues of jobs, for example, job creation, affordable housing for young people, opportunities for young people. These are the things that they care about. And actually, one of the polls from the German EU election, they were found that climate change was ranked just lower than more pressing issues such as inflation. So young people are really worried about the economy, and I think we can draw a similar situation in Trinidad.
But the thing is, if we are reflecting on what's happening globally, because we've used European Union as an example, globally, however, this trend seems to be taking place. How is that actually reflective of what's taking place locally with our politics?
So I think they're similar in terms of the ideology. So thankfully we don't have a far-right party to tout issues of, say, anti-immigration, or at least on a large scale. or anti-internationalism. But issues such as the economy still occupy a very important role. I refer to Shakira Burton, who who won the Poetry Grand Slam, NGC Bookers Lit Fest. Her piece was about young people and getting jobs, and there was a frustration there brewing. And I like to think, with my literature background, poetry is the voice of the people, and Burton's sort of piece sort of captured that. There's a real anxiety among young people, I think. I don't claim to be a spokesperson for young people. I'm nearing the end point of my category as youth, technically. Cutoff year is 35. But I still feel that I can relate to young people. I don't know what TikTok is, actually. But I still feel like I understand some of that, right? So while the ideologies might be different, I feel like the sentiment is still the same. At the core, I think, for young people, some issues remain the same, and that really has to do with what is being done for opportunities.
You've claimed not to be a political analyst, but everyone has an opinion, and I'm curious to know, based off of your research and even what you would have heard, your opinion, do you think that that lack of political ideology, we don't have that in TNT as such, unless you get really into what politicians say when they are campaigning or when they get into office, we don't have clearly defined political ideologies. Our ideologies are PNM, UNC, red, yellow, that's really what it is. Do you think that is actually a core part of our problem, especially in 2024, 2025, we're heading into a general election?
Yeah, absolutely. What do we believe in? Like, who do we look to? How do we identify, these kind of ideologies? So that dearth of ideologies that you're referencing there, I think that's a real problem, because you look around at our leaders and you see infighting. We saw the internal elections. We see cross-fighting, which continues. There was a recent sports rally by the PNM, and they use it as a political platform. So it's not necessarily about the ideology, because you're right, I think there's a lack of one. But there is what I would say, a politics of revenge, a politics of blame. And if that is our ideology, I think that is what further estranges young people, because we're tired of it.
But you're saying that we're tired of it, but do you think young people in TNT in particular are willing to participate first by subscribing to new style of politics?
Yeah.
Do you think that level of participation exists?
No, I don't. I think the youth arms of the various political parties, I think they're more focused on creating a pipeline of voters to solidify their base. And I don't think the focus should be on developing their critical thinking and allowing them to be leaders in their own right. So the participation thing, when it does occur, it's more about let's sturdy up our base for the next generation of voters for these two political parties.
But then, Gerald, we find ourselves in a situation. Why does the youth vote matter then?
Yeah.
If that level of young people may be frustrated, but that frustration is not necessarily equal to participation. So therefore, we find ourselves in a problem. Whilst you're suggesting, watch out for the youth vote, is there even a youth vote to speak about?
Yeah. So yes, we're sort of blinded by the fact that we have a poor culture of data keeping. So we can't even identify what is the pool of eligible young voters. So that's a problem. The census was supposed to be done in 2022. We're still using the pandemic as an excuse for why the census hasn't been completed. Censuses tend to be expensive. Okay, we get that. But it's been 2 years now, and we need a census to let us know how many eligible young voters there are. So that's a problem. But the vote, there is a youth vote. I think it's, like I said, I think it's being channeled into just party politics. So I think that's where it's going, and we're kind of skewed. So we need data collection, and we need youth arms to be a bit better in what they're doing. But there is a youth vote because the fact is those young people are not turning up as much as they should. And I think there's a lack of motivation, a lack of encouragement, a lack of inspiration. And that sort of is being masked and sort of...
Well, clearly you're not going to get that inspiration or that motivation from what is currently being offered.
Yeah.
In fact, what is currently being offered is quite possibly why there is a lack of youth participation.
Yeah.
That being said, it's going to take some sort of self-motivation on the part of young people to actually open their eyes and probably realize, hold up, I think I need to do a bit more than I'm currently doing.
Yes.
The problem is, do we have enough young leaders in TNT that are actually willing to take that stand? And I say that we have youth councils.
Yeah.
We are, whether it be the Trinidad Youth Council, the Tobago Youth Council, we have youth arms of political parties, but they do not seem to be beyond just the organization.
Yeah.
It just seems to be focused on the organization and the objectives of the organization, not necessarily exporting that beyond the organization and truly reflective of a leader beyond their tenure and such.
Yeah.
So then there is a lack of, would you say there is a lack of young leadership?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And even those who are, let's for example say, in the opposition, they're more focused on blame and holding on to power. So there are young politicians, young parliamentarians. They're just not serving young people, which is unfortunate because we always say, well, young people don't get a chance, we don't get a voice. But when we do get the voice, those aren't doing the job and serving young people.
Do you think that you as a young voter can be persuaded?
I think I can. Because I'm done with the two-party system. So I can absolutely be persuaded. It will come down, though, to not just the leader of a particular party, but also the people around them. I understand why people would, even young people, might gravitate towards the two major political parties. They've been in power for the longest time. They've shared power. They have sort of competent people, we would hope.
I like that, sort of competent.
But no, I can't be persuaded. But it would take a lot. It would take a lot to actually show that young people actually matter and issues are being spotlighted, the issues that we care about.
Okay, a fair point in that regard. But are you of the opinion that, again, I think he gave away his age a bit this morning, in so many years, of your studies, your observations, you're a columnist. I mean, you've produced many columns. We'll get into that actually at the latter half of the program. But, do you think that that is going to come from the already established entities?
The persuasion, yeah,
let's put it this way. You haven't been persuaded now as such.
Yeah.
There is a lack of confidence. That has led to great frustration. As you mentioned, I as a young person too, I hope so, I still feel kind of young in some ways. But, at the same time, I share in that frustration.
Yeah.
The thing is that what we have seen is an oversubscription to this sort of whatever the political ideology is in TNT, this two-party system.
Yeah.
And regardless of new entities that may arise, they don't necessarily get that level of support. So is there too much of a reliance for this change to come from what is currently what currently exists?
Yeah. No, I don't think there's too much of reliance. I think that what the stereotypes around young people is that we're headstrong, we're impatient, but we're also in the best position to take risks. And I think young people being in that position, I think that's a real strength because we're not burdened by, our parents perhaps. We don't have that sort of sensibility and we care about what is currently happening. We're seeing, let's show for example, the pro-Palestine movement. It's young people at my university, they were driving that. And young people much significantly younger than I was. So I think it's about risk taking, and if we make a mistake, we accept that and we move on. But I think right now, given that we have the general election coming up next year, I think now is the time to mobilize and organize ourselves. And first of all, be inspired, wake up early, go to the polling stations, EBC, let's be honest, they have gotten better. It took me like a couple minutes to vote last
Same,
election.
same thing with me.
Yeah, so they have gotten better. It's just about waking up early again, maybe a stereotype not associated with young people. But the first thing, we need to be inspired enough to show up. And I don't think right now it's all about, well, the old people not giving us a chance. But the thing is, we need to take our chance, and if possible, we need to take that risk as well.
I very much like the line that you said, that we as young people are in the best position to take risk. I very much appreciate that, and we will get further analysis, and we will continue the conversations in a bit, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a break here on the program, but when we return, there's a question that Gerald had asked. I'm wondering if he's, since authoring this particular piece, he's gotten an answer. But there's also a lot more that Drill is offering to the nation and, by extension, the wider world. We'll get into that after this.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN Content Capital.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Continuing the conversation this morning, and it really focuses on the youth vote here in TNT. We've had conversations focusing on such over the last few months on this platform, and it is going to continue. 2025 is a crucial year for TNT, but I say so in the aspect that not because it's a general election, but because youth participation can decide our fate. That being said, I'm joined by Dr. Gerald DeMattis. He's with us in studio. Thank you for being with us once more, Dr. DeMattis. Continuing the conversation where we left off, you asked a question, when will we ever see a prime ministerial debate in TNT? And I will ask you a question. You have indicated that the Debates Commission, the TNT Debates Commission, exists. That's fair enough. Now, apparently there are lots of organizations that exist but are non-functional. However, do you think that with this organization existing, that we will see a prime ministerial debate, that there will be a level of participation? We know that there should be, but do you think it is possible? Given trends.
You're backing me into a corner here. At my most optimistic, I can't see it happening. I can't see a debate happening. That would be great to see one. And the commission has tried. The last time they tried, we understand, that was peak pandemic, 2019 into 2020. So fair enough. We'll see again. I'm sure they have engaged the political leaders. I'm confident of that. But I still don't think it'll be enough, because I don't think we're there yet ideologically, where we're ready to have like an actual conversation in a civilized way about the issues that matter, and are ready to actually field questions from the public. Because I think right now we're good at shouting at each other, and the political leaders sort of encapsulate that. We're good at taking jabs at each other in parliament, but when it comes down to actually being pressed on issues that they want to implement, I don't think, one, there's a problem of articulation. So how do you make that intelligible to the public? And two, how do you accept that you might be wrong? And I think those are two important things during a debate. You must be able to conduct yourself in a professional way, but also accept that at some points you might get it wrong.
Most impressed, because that's not only something for a debate, that's a life lesson on a whole, accepting when you could be wrong. The other determining factor, as you mentioned, is the politicians themselves. The thing is that, again, there has been a lack of a concrete plan because of a lack of ideology. There's no concrete plan as such. That has hindered the potential for debate. Do you think that that is something young people need to demand? That we want to see you all on a platform, all of you all, whoever that may be, laying out your concrete plans and debating one another? Is that something that needs to be demanded?
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to expect more beyond that, right? We need to expect more from our leaders. How that process happens, how that demand happens, I don't know. The Prime Minister, the opposition leader can freely decline, and there's nothing we can really do about it. What we can do is vote. We can't say this is unacceptable. We need mature leaders. We need leaders who can face off against each other in a productive way. And if those leaders can't do that, then we'll vote you out.
Our expectations for them are high. Our expectations for ourselves also at that same level.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do seem to have high expectations for them, and maybe we do need to lower it considerably, given where we're at and where we have been for quite some time. But I think we should maintain our expectations. Those shouldn't drop, because we need to hold people accountable. And I think for young people in particular, because these issues are only going to intensify. I mean, yes, we can talk about climate change. You had a guest previously talking about Tobago. We need, those issues are going to intensify for young people in the next year, within the next 5 years. So it's time that we make that decision now. First, being inspired to vote and then showing up to the polls.
It's an interview, by the way, that I was not too pleased with myself, if I may say so. But I think I made that clear previously. But anyway, Gerald, there's something a bit more personal that I'm curious to know. Again, you don't often comment on the political landscape. So I was most surprised but pleased. Given what you said this morning, though, one of the key points is that you've studied abroad. Absolutely fantastic what you've achieved, and if I'm not mistaken, you are back and forth because you also work abroad, you know. But the thing is, I don't doubt that TNT is home and will always be home. But do you think that you're going to continue to make it your home for the rest of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And my columns are one way to do that. It keeps me in touch with the country and what's happening. Also, I still, as much as I am quite cynical and critical in my columns, it actually comes from a place of love, a deep and profound love for this country, this complicated country. So I definitely will continue to remain connected, regardless of how much I go back and forth, because I realize too, studying abroad, it has opened my eyes to, you know, how things are done differently, and how much better things could be here. So through my columns, that's one way for me to keep thinking about those issues and how we could become better.
Well, I actually think it's a perfect way to shift the conversation now away from that one particular column and try in the very best sense as possible, reflect on your columns that you've presented weekly over the last year at least, because you, in 1 week's time, will actually be launching your first publication, first published book, Opinions in Review 2023. First of all, congratulations. This is rather exciting. But tell us more about the book itself and what the book actually, it gives away hints, Opinions in Review, but what does the book itself actually present to the public?
Yeah. First of all, I want to talk about what the book, as in its entirety, what it represents. It represents production. And I want that book, everything that book encapsulates, the very book, very item, I want that to be an inspiration for young people. So you can create something, you don't have to wait around. It was a self-published book. I designed it myself, and I compiled it myself. So you don't have to wait around for anyone to do anything, okay, specifically within the context of young people. Now, in terms of what the book captures, it is meant to be a year in review reflection through the eyes of one person, that one person being me. All of the columns I've written last year sort of compiled and in the order that it was published. So what I also hope that readers get out of it is how things can be changed, and perhaps someone reading 10 years from now might say, oh wow, we've made so much progress, hopefully. That is what they say. They don't say, well, things haven't really changed at all.
But as I said, you write a column weekly. Over this particular period of time that you're focusing on, 2023 to 2024, what are some of the developments or declines that you have seen or experienced?
The developments.
Developments, declines. I mean, again, given your work and what you focused on, you tend to focus on a lot of societal issues, a lot of social issues, and not often political issues, but you are very much reflective of Trinidad and Tobago society and what we're seeing happening globally. And I'm curious to know, in your opinion, what are some of the wins or some of the losses that you would have seen within the last year?
Yeah, unfortunately, I would have to say there have been more losses, more declines. Connected to questions of society and culture, I've focused a lot on cyberbullying, for example, which I feel is only going to intensify, not just in Trinidad. Youth mental health, these are the things that I feel would matter to young people, of course, growing up with all these distractions around them, around us. I also think that pushing for more equality, more LGBTQ rights. Those should matter, given the climate that we're in right now. I think young people are finding themselves more with access to international media. They're realizing, well, I'm not actually that different after all, and I shouldn't be persecuted for that. So those also form a major part of my writing, and I would hope that with every, I'm grateful for an editor that is allowing those articles to be published, because that shows in itself some sort of progress. It's not a matter of who's reading it. I don't take for granted that maybe not many people read my columns, but I'm hoping that if there's one person, one parliamentarian who reads it and is reminded of something, one independent senator, for example, who can actually bring those issues to government. Also things like policy, climate change policy. We saw recently another oil spill off Tobago. That's been something, last time I was here, we spoke about that in the context of COP28. So those are I'd like to think that the wins for my columns have to do with continuous dialogue, because that's where I think change has to begin. It has to begin with, as prosaic as this may sound, it has to begin with the conversation. And if people aren't talking about it, we won't really understand, and it's very much in the spotlight.
You like a challenge, don't you? I mean, apart from focusing on all of that, you've mentioned that this is self-published and self-designed. You really like a challenge, don't you?
I'm nothing if not ambitious.
That is quite a remarkable thing. But in putting this book together, did you find any difficulties in really putting the essence of Dr. Jarrell DeMatteis in it? Or is it something that came naturally to you?
Yeah. Oh, what is my essence? I'm continuously trying to figure that out. It was not difficult for me, the writing, because I had done, thankfully, I sort of cheated. I did most of the writing the year before.
His first lesson was, be ambitious. These are things that you can do. The second lesson was, I cheated a little bit.
Listen, sometimes you need to know to work hard. Work smart,
work
not
smart.
hard, right? But I did include a preface in the book, which was possibly the hardest thing I had to write, even though I write weekly columns. It was the hardest thing because I actually wanted to give readers an insight into my journey as a writer. So that was probably the hardest part, because in addition to not writing about politics much, you might also note that I don't write about myself and my identity much. And that's because...
That's a mystery.
Right? So...
I don't even know if his real name is Jarrell.
I am a doctor, though.
Yes, it's
so the actual design of the book was also... it also took some time, because I'm not necessarily like this creative person in terms of visuals. So that was a learning curve for me. But again, if we're just tying things back to what we've talked about, it's all about embracing those challenges as young people and being brave, but also being patient with ourselves, because we will learn and things will happen. But if we don't find that they're happening soon enough, we have to be able to grab it.
What role do you think you have to play in respect to TNT's future? What role are you willing and wanting to play?
These are difficult questions.
I know, right? It just comes to me.
Paige, you didn't prepare me for this one. I like this role that I'm in right now. I like that I'm able to write, and this is my strength. But I also I want my role to be helping people to think, writing about things that people aren't quite aware of, and showing people that things are happening around us, and we should use that as inspiration to create change. And for young people in particular, I hope that they read this and they be inspired to create something of their own, but also read it and be inspired to mobilize and seek out change wherever it may be for them, if it's in politics or not.
Do you think that you are making an impact? Do you think that you are leading in some way or the other a revolution? if you said that you're opening up people's minds, that's a paradigm shift in itself.
Yeah. I'm not sure if, I mean, some people read my columns and they say, these are really good columns. I really enjoy columns. I've heard people say they're the only one my column is the only one that they read. So I'm really inspired by that. I'm grateful for that. But in terms of how I view my impact, I'm not sure yet. I'm still learning the things that I don't know. Right? So I'm still
learning. I don't think you'll ever stop.
Right? So as much as, yes, I would like to think that I'm showing people a different path, and we're talking about difficult issues that 40 years ago we wouldn't be thinking about. I would love to think that I'm doing something new here. But more importantly, I want to inspire people to do the same, because I'm sure they're much better people, much more capable than I am to do that.
Well, the book Opinions in Review, and you know, when you take a look back, have you ever been challenged by yourself, not by society? There will always be challenges, but by yourself to express your true opinions and thoughts and put it out there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But it's part of my journey and my progress as a writer, because when I started out, the way I was writing was very harsh, and I realized that I couldn't win any readers over because it was almost polemic in that way. I was picking fights, but now I've learned to temper my argument, and in terms of my true opinion, they are still my true opinions. I do believe that if young people can show up to the polls, I think we can be major disruptors. We may not vote the person that we want to be in parliament, but we can shake up a system. I truly believe that. And I do believe all of the things I write. It's just a matter of how I'm framing the opinion. And in particular, this most recent column, what I've done is I've shown how young people are showing up and how they're being pulled to the far right in a way that could be dangerous for Europe. But if we use it productively here, we can actually make it useful for us.
Do you plan on continuing authoring columns for time to come?
I do plan on doing. I'm not sure when I will stop. Sometimes I do feel like it's a lot, it's a lot to come up with ideas, and sometimes I'm just not feeling to write. But I do want to continue. I want to continue publishing opinions and reviews in 2024, 2025. And when I stop, I'll stop. But right now, I don't see myself stopping.
Now, Gerald, where can people actually get a copy of this book?
Yeah.
I know the book launch is next week.
Yes.
But any information on this point that you can share with them in actually getting a copy of this book?
Yes. So it is on Amazon. And for those who will attend the launch, I do plan to have a little discount, a small discount, so you can have a special launch price. In terms of getting it into local bookstores, that is in progress. So that will happen eventually, I hope. But certainly on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble as well. And if you reach out to me, I'm sure we can organize a delivery.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful. Now, in closing, and again, thank you very much for your time this morning. We actually were able to get through a lot, and I'm very pleased and satisfied. You've said quite a number of things that even has me on the spot, where we're saying that we as young people, we're in the best position to take risk. Even politically, as you were speaking about, and socially. But what do you want your message overall from this morning's discussions to young people? I think, how would you conclude that, given all that has been said?
Yeah, I think we need to, as young people, we need to be aware of what is going on in the world. I know it's a lot to take in, and there are multiple conflicts happening right now. There's still a war in Ukraine. There's still invasion of Palestine. So there's a lot of negative things and a lot of turn-offs that would make us not want to watch the news. But we need to be aware of what is going on as young people, because we're in the best position to be most affected by these consequences. Yes, we can talk about climate change, but also questions of inflation. So I think as young people, we need to be aware. We can't be like, I always give the analogy, we can't be like SpongeBob in a pineapple under the sea. But so I think we need to read more. I think we also really should draw inspiration. And if we're not getting inspiration from people around us, we should be inspired by ourselves, by the fact that we're willing to create a change. And we need to be proactive in that. I also think that now would be the time to, like I said, mobilize in communities, organize ourselves, and be inspired enough for when the general election does come around, that we're in the best position to vote, we're well informed, and we can make a decision, whatever that decision will be.
Dr. DeMatteis is leading a paradigm revolution there with his words. Dr. Gerald DeMatteis, congratulations once more. I think it's excellent, your messaging this morning, but even the work that you've done with your columns and the publication of this work, self-publication, if I can stress on that. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for being here this morning and for taking the time to join us on the program.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is where we conclude AM Prime for this morning. Thank you very much to my guests for joining me on the program. I'm glad that we were able to have some constructive conversation this morning, indeed. And hopefully it has opened up your mind and really opened up your eyes to a lot more that is prevalent in our society. We probably tend to turn our backs to it because we're so frustrated and stressed out by so many things. It's difficult to keep up at times. But the message from Dr. DeMatteis is that really it's time for us to inspire ourselves, and it's really time for us to be motivated by our frustrations. Use it constructively. And I fully agree with that message. And that's it. I want to thank also my team behind the doors who always make AM Prime happen in Ryan Gomez Burke and Matt Wood. We thank them very much for their hard work and efforts. And of course, to you, the viewer, have a good day ahead, a safe one, a productive one. And I'm Keaton Shaw saying, I'll see you again very soon. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Bye-bye.